That's the first time that I said out loud that I did not want to have kids, and having my grandmother say, "Don't say that, because God is listening." There's always something to heal in our relationship with our mothers. For most women, if not all of us, it's like, okay, I'll stay single. That's fine. I'll be fine, because I really truly didn't think that I was going to find someone who would be truly okay with me being child free. Hi, welcome to the Life Outside the Default podcast. I'm your guest, Wilmarie Hernandez. I'm a transformational life coach for child-free women and creator of the Life Without Kids community on Instagram and the Childfree Sisterhood group program.
Welcome, Wilmarie. I'm super excited to have this conversation with you today. Quite a few of the people that I've spoke with so far kind of had this child-free journey where they thought they would have children because that's what you do. And then that time came and they realized they no longer had that desire, or they realized they actually had a choice where they don't have to have children. Your journey was pretty different, though. You recognized from a very young age that that wasn't the life for you. Could you tell us about that?
Yes, I always like to say that I decided that I was child-free when I was 11 years old. And the reason I say that is because that's the first time that I said out loud that I did not want to have kids when I grew up. Of course, I didn't know the implications of that when I was 11 years old, but clearly something in me recognized something, right? And my first memory of me saying that out loud is saying it in front of my family and having my grandmother say to me, "Don't say that, because God is listening." So immediately to me, that told me that this was something that was wrong, that it was a sin, that it was punishable, that I should not be expressing these feelings. And so immediately that sparked something in me. It, instead of making me doubt myself, it actually made me curious about, you know, why is this wrong? Why do I have to become a mother? Why is this such a expected thing for a woman to have to do? And so obviously that took me in a long journey throughout my life of exploring and asking myself many questions and reflecting and uh yeah, asking myself, like, what do I really want and why not? And it was a long journey, not only by myself but also by meeting other people, right? Dating was very challenging as a child-free woman, but all of those experiences at the end of the day just reaffirmed my desired deeper truth that I guess I knew all the way back when I was 11 years old.
That's awesome that you knew at such a young age. Do you feel like something kind of gave you that idea? Did you see other women that made that decision, or was there something that impacted you?
Yes, that's a great question, because growing up, so I grew up in Puerto Rico, and it's a very traditional conservative culture for the most part, mostly Catholic. And so I did not have anyone around me that was child free. Definitely, that was not a term that I ever heard back then. I think it's a pretty recent term. So I didn't know anyone who didn't have kids or didn't want to have kids, right? So the people that didn't have kids either was because they never got married or they had some medical reasons not to have babies, right? But I never met anyone who said that they did not want to have children, that this was a choice. So it was interesting that I say that out loud at such a young age. And I think the reason for that is because I was a very observant kid, and I would look around me, right? The examples that I saw of women in my family, in my surroundings, in the place that I was growing. And I saw a lot of struggle. I saw a lot of women that were sacrificing their lives to raise a family. I saw a lot of marriages where it wasn't really equal. The work done in the household wasn't equal. So to me, getting married, or a marriage and having kids at that time, to me, it looked like not fun at all. It looked like sacrifice. It looked like being exhausted. It looked like, yeah, it didn't look like anything that I wanted to experience. I And then also at around that age, there were shows on TV, like for example, Sex in the City and these type of shows that will show like a little, like a different way of being a woman in the world. A little bit more open, a little bit more independent, career oriented, right? And so I think really it was through these shows or TV, fantasies that I had some exposure to something different that kind of validated my feelings. Like it didn't have to be the way that I was being shown in my life. So I think that's where it started because I definitely did not have any examples or role models of child-free women around me at all.
That's very observant and smart, I guess you could say, of a young girl, to kind of be able to look at what's in front of her and look at what's on TV and put it together and say, like, what do I want?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know how to explain that because even looking back, I'm like, yeah, why why was I paying attention to these things? But I also like to now, you know, many years later, I think or I come to believe that we come to this world with certain type of cravings, things that maybe we inherited from our female ancestors, right? The same way that we inherit physical features and taste and likes and all of that, we also inherit a lot of the frustrations and wounds and sadness and struggles that the woman before us endured. And I think sometimes we come with this desire to express things that they couldn't express, right? And so in this case, I think that a lot of women that came before us did not have a choice when it comes to having children, right? It was something that either was expected or it just happened because women didn't have any other options. They couldn't vote,
Mhm.
they couldn't work, they couldn't decide for themselves. And so I don't know, I think that maybe something inside of me wanted to be expressed, right? That wasn't expressed before in the woman that came before me. Or at least that's how it a way that I like to think about it.
I agree with that. It's like kind of breaking something in the system that's been carried through our DNA. And for some reason, you, myself, whoever else kind of has that privilege, right?
Yeah.
Also, in this time frame that we live in, I think it was as recent as the 70s, women weren't allowed to even open their own bank
Mhm.
account without a male signature.
Yep.
Like, amazing what we can do now that is not that long ago, women couldn't even do.
I have my mother-in-law who's still alive and she's 78. She tells me stories all the time. When she got married, she couldn't open a bank account by herself. She needed her husband's signature. And
Mhm.
she's still alive and healthy. And, it's crazy to think that, sometimes we think about those things being so long ago, but not really. And also
No, not really.
there are still many societies where that's still the case, right? That where women don't have rights or choices.
That's very true. Yeah. Another reason to speak out, for others as well. And hopefully their cultures and society will progress as well. Your grandmother initially kind of, gave you a little bit of a negative response when you first said that. But as you were growing up, did you continue to speak out that that was your desire, or did you kind of keep it quiet?
Yeah, no, I continued. I think I was a very good girl in many ways, right? I was like the teacher's pet and all of those things. But at the same time, I was a little rebellious in other ways. Like, for example, when I heard that, instead of making me feel like, oh, I should keep this hidden, I was like, now I'm gonna mess with them. I think it's because in my mind, it just didn't make sense, right? I don't know
Mhm.
why, but at that age, to me, that just did not make sense. Like, why is this something wrong? Why do I have to have children? Why do I have to want to have children? So, because in my mind, it didn't make sense. I didn't think I was wrong. I genuinely didn't think it was wrong. I could see that it was wrong how it was perceived, right? Like there was something wrong about it, but I didn't feel like it was truly something wrong, right? So,
Mhm.
so I did not hide it. It's funny because sometimes when I travel back to my hometown and visit family, cousins that now they have their own families and they have kids, and whenever we get together, it's so funny because they always tell me like, "Oh my God, Wilmarie, I remember you always say you didn't want to have kids, and look at you, you didn't have them." Because I think everybody was expecting, obviously, that as everyone else, I would also end up having kids. It's something that it was just people didn't think about, it's just it happens. It was expected to
Right.
happen and it was inevitable. And even if I said those things when I was a kid, it was just something that I was saying. It wasn't something that was I was going to actually maintain, right? That opinion. So it's funny because they even remember when we were kids and I would say those things. But yeah, I didn't keep it hidden. I always kept saying that I didn't want to have kids. I actually used to say that I didn't want to get married either. Again, because the examples of what I saw marriage being, I just didn't feel like I wanted that. I didn't want to be confined to a household or having to ask permission to a man to do something, all those things. So I used to say that I didn't want to get married either. And as I grew up, I did change my mind in some of these things, but the kids thing remained, right? It remained the fact that I didn't want to have kids. I do have to say that there were many situations growing up, especially when I entered the workforce, where I did hide or didn't or wasn't super open about it in front of some people, especially people who, were older than me, and I want them to have a good image of me, or, I would definitely selectively hide it or just not be open about it. If somebody would ask me and I would say, oh, maybe later, who knows, one day. And, in part is because I knew the situation that I was in those specific moments and the people that you have to navigate sometimes, the game of life. um,
Absolutely.
but but deep down, I was clear. Another situation was when I was dating in my early 20s. Sometimes I would also selectively hide it because I realized early on that when I was open about it and I would say that I didn't want to have kids in the future, surprisingly to me, most men were not happy about that. They did want to have kids in the future. So as soon as I said that I didn't want to have kids in the future, they would kind of like switch, like, oh yeah, we can hang out, but they wouldn't see it as like a long term, with the potential of a long term relationship. And so sometimes if I wanted to extend the fun, I would hide it. But yeah, but I was clear on what I wanted.
Yeah, I've listened to one of your recent podcast episodes where you were talking about the challenges of dating and how sometimes when the men would hear you didn't want children, it was like, oh, she's just for fun then. She's not
Yeah.
wife material, quote unquote, and the challenges there, which I found interesting because I had like the opposite experience. The men that I had dated, they were like ecstatic. They're like, okay, awesome. Because they didn't want kids. So, and they were like, finally, a female who doesn't want kids because they had like the opposite where they were only finding women that wanted children,
Mhm.
So that was very eye-opening for me to hear your experience and your story.
Yeah.
And I was curious, like, when they told you that, how did that make you feel kind of on a deeper level?
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, especially during that time, early 20s, I always been a romantic. I did dream about having a partner, like a long-term, partner. And it was many times it was heartbreaking because I feel like, oh, you make me feel like you're not giving me a chance to get to know me. I'm not just a vessel for kids. I'm a human being with
Right.
ideas, um and I always consider myself like such a fun date. Like I knew I would make a great partner, and it was kind of heartbreaking that was kind of such a big deal, where people or guys would stop looking further. And yeah, it was a little heartbreaking at times, but it kind of reaffirmed to me the fact that this is not something that I can settle for. This is not something that I can change my mind. There was a time where I just felt like it's okay. I kind of make peace with it. And I was like, okay, I'll stay single. That's fine. I'll be fine. I'll have fun. I'll have a great life. And I'm okay having fun with guys. You know, it doesn't have to be serious. I can get my needs met and keep on going with my life. And I kind of make peace with it because I really truly didn't think that I was going to find someone who would be truly okay with me being child free. Which again, it was surprising to me because I thought that men, for the most part, did not want that responsibility or would prefer not having that responsibility of having kids. But yeah, it's interesting. Your experience was different to me. Yeah, all pretty much every man that I went out. I guess also it wasn't that they wanted kids right then and there, but eventually, right? Like they saw
Eventually.
in their future having a family in that sense. So
I love how when, your family, your grandmother kind of said like, "Oh, don't say that." And then the men were kind of putting you off because you didn't want children eventually. I love how instead of that changing who you were or changing your mind, it like grounded you even more and like, "No,
mm,
this is who I am." I think that's awesome.
yeah, I think that was the part of me who was kind of rebellious because I don't think or maybe younger me, I wouldn't consider myself rebellious because I did follow a lot of the normal, I guess, established path of in many ways, but there were certain things that I just couldn't. Even when I went to college, I remember in my family there was this big push because I was a great student, etc. And there was this big push for me to go to whether, law school or med school or something like that, and which I was not interested in at all. And I ended up going into engineering, but it wasn't because I love it. It wasn't because something I wanted to do, right? It was kind of following the script of what family and peers were telling me I should do. And I lasted a year and I was like, nope, this is not for me. This is not something that I cannot change this about me. And I remember I switched to communications. I ended up completing a bachelor's in journalism. And I remember when I did the switch, I went to tell my mom, and she literally said to me, "Oh my God, Wilmarie, you're making this is a big mistake. You're going to end up in the unemployment lines if you do this." And even with that message that not only came from her but from a lot of people around me back then, I just couldn't. I was like, I rather end up under a bridge, you know, than that. I cannot sell my soul in this way. And so yeah, there are many areas I guess in my life where I just I just couldn't. Like there was something in me that I just couldn't fake it, I guess.
Yeah, you wouldn't be happy in the long run
Right, right.
if you were living somebody else's life.
Exactly.
But all of that eventually turned around for you. You gave up on dating apps except for one last go. And then you want to tell us what happened? So there's hope for people, maybe if they're listening and in the similar situation.
Yes, of course. Yeah, so I loved using dating apps. To me, it was one of the greatest human inventions. Even though I know right now, everything changes and not everything ends up being necessarily great for everyone because it's more about how we use it than the actual tool. But back then, I was like, oh my God, you have a catalog here, people, and I had a lot of fun with it. I cannot lie. Right? I had a lot of fun with it. I met a lot of people. I also was in Washington D.C., which is a pretty diverse city. So you get to meet so many people from so many different backgrounds and cultures. So to me, it was like very, very interesting. But after like 5 or 6 years dating in that way, I I was kind of like tired of it a little bit. I guess everybody gets to a point, or at least I heard a lot of people that they get to a point where they get exhausted by the dating scene. And I wanted to take a break. I had just finished my MBA in marketing, and I felt like kind of like that Sex in the City type of energy life. I had my little apartment and I was making money and I was in a city, and I just felt like I can do whatever I want. So I decided to give it a break and focus on myself, focus on traveling with my friends and doing other things. But before closing the apps, yeah, I decided to give it a last try. And back then, I was using this app that had a bunch of filters that I never really used all of them because I would go for like the easiest kind of basic things. But this time, I was like, you know what? Let me just use all of them. Why not? And I even selected a specific zodiac sign and all of these very specific things. And when I click search, Ryan came up, and I sent him a text or a DM, and the rest is history. We met the first date. We spent like 4 hours talking and drinking wine, and obviously we did talk about being child free. His experience was similar to the guys that you were talking about, where in the past he had dated women that were very, very much into having kids. That's what they wanted, and because he had those experiences, he realized that, oh, that's actually not something that I want. So we met, I guess, at the right time, having had experiences that led us to this mindset that we had at the moment. And yeah, we've been together for almost 13 years, married almost 4, and he ended up getting a vasectomy, which was an amazing like weight off my shoulders type of thing, because that's something that as a child-free woman was always such a huge anxiety inducing thing, just having to make sure we have a condom, make sure I take my pill, like, and even with all of that, there's still stress around it, or at least there was stress for me. So yeah, there is hope. There is hope. Like, being 100% honest with you, I didn't think I was going to find someone, and I was okay with it at that point, right? I was like,
Mhm.
it's fine. If it comes, it comes. If not, I know that I can lead a happy life. Like, I have everything I need to be happy and to forge my own life. And, there's so many things that I can do. So I think that played a role, right? That I wasn't so hung up on the idea that I had to have a partner. So when I met him, it was pretty relaxed, right? It was pretty natural, and there wasn't anything being forced.
I think that's so important with anything in life,
Mm,
especially relationships. But when you get to that point where you're like, you know what, I'm okay with whatever happens, I've found in my own experience that's usually when the right things happen because you're
yeah.
not trying to force anything. At what point did you get into coaching? Because you went from a communications degree and now you're coaching child-free
Yes.
women.
So I have been in the self-development world since I was 12 years old, which, I do think that is something that also influenced a lot of my confidence in my intuition and my inner voice. But when Ryan and I got together, and we were officially dating, there was a moment where we looked at each other and we started talking about our future and our lives. And we realized that we didn't have to live the life that we were living because we weren't going to have children. Up to that point, we were following a script that is usually a script for people who would have, children and all of these things. And when we realized that, it was kind of like a world of possibilities opened up, right? At that point, we were living in an area that was like an amazing school district, very high tax area, and families all around us. And, we were like, we don't need to be here. We don't need to be paying this much. We don't need to save whatever amount of money for like sending a kid to college, or, all of these things that most people do. So at that point, we started thinking about what we actually wanted to do, what we were passionate about, what possibilities were out there for us. And like I said before, I've been working and involved in the self-development world for a long time, but I wanted to go at it a little bit more, professionally. So I got a certification and accreditation, and I started offering life coaching in general. I actually didn't started doing life coaching for child-free women. I was doing more life coaching and career coaching for people who wanted to pivot or change their careers, etc. And it's so interesting because while I was going through the certification program, there were people focusing on different things, right? And they were people focusing on nutrition, or even moms, right? Being a life coach for moms that want to also have a career, or different things. But I never heard of anyone focusing on child free or child free women. And so to me, those things didn't click, right? Because I never heard of it, right? I just never heard of it. So it was interesting because I had started, I created social media content about the child-free lifestyle just because I was living it. And I found talking to people that, first of all, there weren't many people around me that were open about that. So I wanted to genuinely connect with other people that were. And I also found people that didn't want to have kids but felt ashamed about it. So I started creating social media content as a way of building community, meeting other people, and also, expressing my pride in my identity, because I feel like I didn't know anyone around me who felt proud about that, or would say it out loud. So that was kind of like my way of expressing that creatively in a way. And so, but I was doing those two things. I was having my business, my side business as a life coach and career coach, and I was creating social media for Childfree, but those things never clicked to me until I started, the community, the Childfree community on Instagram started growing, and I will get DMs and connect with people and start having conversation where I was like, oh, these same tools that are helping people for different areas of their lives are the same tools that can help people work through their shame or guilt or confidence around their child-free choice. And so that's when I was like, oh, okay, it's 1 + 1 2.
Yeah.
and but at that time, uh, I had been creating content, social media content for years now. I had been doing my life coaching business for a few years now. But at that time, my husband and I, we decided that we wanted to go and travel the world. So we sold everything that we had, and we got our backpacks, and we got married officially because we were living together, but we decided to get married. And we went to travel, backpacking around the world for 15 months. So I had to put that a little bit on hold, to start offering coaching to the child free community, because I wanted to take that time. I mean, and zero regrets. It was amazing. I wanted to take that time for myself and to enjoy our trip. So when we came back and we decided to, okay, now we don't have to live a life like a traditional life as we were.
Hmm.
We can do whatever we want. So I decided to start offering officially my coaching services to the child free community and started focusing on that. And it has been 2 years since I started doing that officially. And it has been wonderful. It has been so rewarding to be able to offer, this help and these spaces, these safe spaces for women to come together and explore their feelings and talk openly about it, because there's so many women that don't have anyone around them to openly talk about this, especially in a way, feeling proud about it. It's been beautiful so far.
I'm so glad you recognize that need because I think it's so important that you have a coach who has a similar mindset as what you're trying to accomplish. As child free people, I feel like we look at the world a little bit differently or through a different lens than people who want to be parents. And so just having someone in your corner that understands that is so important. And the space that you've created, like just the child-free women's circles that you hold, they've been amazing. Like just coming together with other women and knowing that they feel the same way. Like you said, it's a safe space. You can talk openly. I think it's really, really beneficial for the community.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. There are not many spaces for us. There's so many spaces for moms, for example, to get together.
Yes.
And the way that society is built is kind of like there's so many ways for them to find these, groups and their tribe. But for child-free women, that's something that we have to kind of more intentionally create. But it makes such a big difference to be able to just like like it's like an exhale, right? To just say what you feel and know that the women there are not judging you, that they have gone through a similar situation or have felt similar things, and that it's totally okay, it's totally fine. You're not crazy, you're not alone, you're not the only one. And yeah, it has been beautiful to meet so many incredible amazing child-free women. One thing that I just keep, it always surprises me. I don't know why, but it's in a good way, is the fact that we're so diverse, but this choice still kind of bring us together. Women that I've met through my coaching and the circle and the community we have in Discord, just all walks of life, all around the world, different cultures, different professional backgrounds, and still it's being child free is something that kind of like binds us together in a very beautiful way. So that's really cool to have met so many diverse women, powerful, intelligent women. Has been amazing.
Yeah, in the Discord, when new women are coming in and they introduce themselves, it's global. They're from all
Yeah.
over the world and varying ages. And
Mhm.
it's really neat to see, like, okay, there's more of us out there, I think, than we realize sometimes
Yes.
because you don't always, when you have a child, it's easy. You can see, oh, they have a kid. When you don't
Hmm.
have a kid, you don't know, is it because they don't want it or other reasons? So having that space where you can see that and know that is really neat.
And it makes my younger self very happy because like I said, I didn't know anyone growing up. So now it's like, oh, so many. Like, this
Yes.
is so cool.
I was thinking a few days ago, like, did I know anybody when I was younger that didn't have kids? And I remembered one couple I knew from church. My parents took me to church. It was like their age group couple. And I always looked at them and they just looked like they had fun. And I always thought they look so great for their age. I think they don't have the stress of kids. And it always was like attractive to me. So I don't think at the moment I was like really processing it in that manner, but looking back, I definitely did like look up to them as somebody I wanted to be, you know, and they would
Yeah.
go on vacations and do all these things that they could do. So it's pretty neat. You talk a lot about in your like Discord in the women's circle, you talk a lot about the mother wound.
Mhm.
Could you tell us a little bit about that and what that is?
Yes. So the mother wound is something is so that's a psychological concept, right? About the experience that we as women go through in our lives, specifically with our mothers. And it's something that we all go through inevitably, just it's a human thing, and especially as women living in a patriarchal society. So pretty much what this means is the emotional disconnection that we have or that we feel with our mothers, whether because we were emotionally neglected or we didn't receive what we needed from her. And this is not because necessarily your mother was a bad person intentionally, although, there's all kinds, right? But it's more because when we're born, we expect unconditional love. I mean, as babies, we need that, right? We need the care and love from our mothers to survive, right? And so when we grow up and our mothers cannot fulfill all of these needs that we have in the way that we need them, that one starts to be created, right? It's like we didn't get that emotional nourishment in the way that we needed. And and I said, it's a human thing because no one, as humans, we're imperfect, and no one can truly fulfill all of our needs, including our mothers, even if we unconsciously expect that from her. But also, when it comes to child-free women, this goes a little bit deeper because the fact that we don't want to have children, and a lot of our mothers expect that from us, whether because they're just part of the society that we live in, where it is expected as a general thing, or because they want to be grandmothers, then it creates even a bigger disconnection sometimes, right? Because we don't feel seen, we don't feel understood, we don't feel respected in our choice, right? And so that wound can be even a little bit deeper than it already is as a human, experience for a woman. And so to me, that has been a concept that has been very important to bring into my spaces, my coaching spaces, because it's not something that we talk a lot about in general, and it's not something that we are always super aware of. But in my experience, in my own journey, and the journey of most women that I've met, there's always something to heal in our relationship with our mothers. There's always something there, whether, for some people it's mm, you know, more than others. Like I said before, there are situations where they're, abuse, right? But there are other
Mm-hmm.
situations where it's more like an emotional disconnection, right? And emotional
Mm-hmm.
needs not being met. But regardless where in the spectrum you are, the truth is that for most women, if not all of us, there is something to heal there. And why that is important to do, right? And when I say healing, is not to have a good relationship with our mothers, because that is not necessarily always possible or healthy, right?
Hmm.
For some people, it's healthier not to have a close relationship with their mothers, right? I mean, we all have different circumstances. But when I say healing the wound, is to not let that anger, sadness, bitterness that have been, that wound that has been created to guide us, right? To be the thing that guide our choices, our decisions, how we see ourselves, how we see other women. Because our mothers are the first example we have of what a woman is, what a friend, female friend is, what a feminine is, all of these things. So unconsciously, that relationship color how we see ourselves, how we see other women, how we treat ourselves, how we treat other women. So healing that, right? Understanding that and healing that, meaning not letting that guide our choices and our behaviors, is super important for every woman, but I think especially for child-free women, again, because it's like a, a little bit deeper because of the fact that we're choosing something completely different from our mothers. So when I've explored this in my own life and with my clients, it has been very beautiful, because even though it can be a little bit painful for some people to go there, depending on their own experiences with their mothers, at the end of the day, it has been beautiful to see the perspective changing and understanding and separating, right? Who their mother in that relationship was or is, and who I want to be and how I want to show up in my life and in the world. So yeah, it's a very important concept, I think, for me to bring up to my spaces for child-free women to explore.
I agree. There could be an extra layer of difficulty. I'm not sure what the right word is, but when you choose to be child free, especially if your mother was expecting or wanting grandchildren, we hear a lot about that.
Yeah. Yeah, and for a lot of people, unfortunately, there's a lot of sense of disappointment, right? That can their mothers can express. Also, sometimes making us feel kind of like infantilizing us, because sometimes there can be comments like, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You'll change your mind. You're too young to know," etc. And so, yeah, that creates a deeper or disconnection in that
Mhm.
relationship.
If one of our listeners was going through a situation like that with their mother, or even their father, really, but is there one tip that you could give them that might be able to help them think about something a little differently or do something to kind of work towards healing that?
Mm. Yeah. It depends on the specific situation, but as a general, you know, advice, I guess, this can sound a little bit harsh, but I really emphasize in the fact that we have to decenter our parents. We grow up, but sometimes inside we don't necessarily when it comes to that need or that craving, I guess, of pleasing our parents. There's always that thing inside of us that want to please them, want to feel like they love us and understand us and accept us. And we have to kind of like cut that umbilical cord, right? We have to start seeing our parents as adults and know that, yeah, we were children once, but now this relationship is an adult relationship. And it has to be mutual. It has to be chosen, right? It has to, in order for it to be healthy, right? And so I would say start looking at your parents in that way, right? As flawed adults, right? With their own, they're not perfect people. Also, the result of their own upbringing and the
Mhm.
times that they lived in and the values that they were brought up with, and understand that, yeah, you're not a child anymore. You don't have to please them. They don't have to approve of you. You can actually choose however you want to live your life, and it's okay if they don't approve of that. I know that can be a little easier to say than do, but it's sometimes we have to get to that point where it's like gotta cut that umbilical cord, right? We're not children anymore. And of course, there are are many things that we can do in order to get to that point. But establishing boundaries, I say, would be one of the first steps into getting to that point where we feel truly that their disapproval doesn't affect us as much, right? Establishing those boundaries is very important. Whether it's, what you expect from the relationship, right? So being open and honest about what you expect from it, what your needs are, and the connection that you're willing to have, right? So if something is not healthy, walking away, right? I used to say, for example, for our parents, my parents and my parents, that it gets to a point where if you think about it objectively, the relationship as adults, it becomes something that is more like it has to be more of a friendship, right? So if you're not willing to have this mutual respect, I can walk away. I don't have to continue to have this relationship. But of course, it varies depending on how dynamics are in different families. Is very different. And the last thing that I would say is sometimes we have these feelings of, I want my parents to approve and respect my decision and ta ta ta. And sometimes we don't stand up to them because we still depend on them in some ways. So, for example, I hear a lot of, and especially in today's economy, right? I hear a lot of adult children that still depend in some way financially from their parents, right? And so that to me, it's a way of, you're still a child in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really hard to establish those boundaries when you are still depending on your parents in some way because they do hold some power over you, So that's why I say there's different situations and different dynamics that makes all of these things a little bit different for each person. But we have to come to this place where we are literally two adults having a relationship and everything that means, right? I don't depend on you. You don't depend on, this, it has to be mutual. It has to be reciprocal when it comes to respect, when it comes to boundaries and all of that. Yeah. It's a sensitive topic for a lot of people.
But that's great advice to really make that shift as you
Mhm.
become an adult, to become an adult,
Right.
stand on your own, and have them more as a friend
Hmm.
versus somebody still managing your life in one way or another.
Yeah.
So within your community, you also offer direct one-on-one coaching. What is that like? What can somebody expect if they were to work with you one-on-one?
Oh, yes. So that's kind of like the deeper type of work that I do because it's one-on-one, so it's more focused on yourself. And what I do is I offer a 12-week program or 12-week package of coaching sessions where I use my kid-free blueprint. I guide you step by step on how to become a truly, genuinely confident, child-free woman, however that looks like to you, right? So we explore, first of all, what do you want in your life? How do you want your life to look like? How do you want to feel? And then what are the things that are stopping you from being that, right? From living the life that you want to live. And so from there, we explore layer by layer how to embody the characteristic that will lead you to have that life that you want to have. And it varies, right? Because for some clients that I've worked with, their focus is more on their career, for example, like how they want to find their purpose, they want to find their passion, and um, we explore the how being child-free woman helps you get there, right? Because even though we have all of these areas of our lives, we are still the same. We are the same person experiencing all of these things. So everything is connected. Everything is connected. For some other clients that I work with, it's more about their confidence in their child-free choice. So not feeling ashamed, not feeling guilty when they talk to their parents or their friends or people in general. Other clients that I've had have been more focused on their relationship, their dating or romantic area of life, because it is a challenge as a child-free woman sometimes to be open about this and with other potential partners. So it varies, right? It's whatever area of your life you feel like you want to achieve something different, right? Something that you've been dreaming, craving, desiring.
When someone works with you one on one, how long do you typically work together?
So the 12 weeks that I mentioned, most of my clients do another 12 weeks. So for most of my clients, it's a 24-week process. Yeah, I would say 50-50. 50% do a 24-week process, and the other 50% do the 12 week.
So if the 12 weeks they don't feel like they're quite where they want to be, they could extend it and continue.
Yes, or if they want to explore something, because that's the thing. Once you explore what you wanted to explore and you achieve certain things in the period of time, you realize that, oh, I also want to work on this, right? Or you find something else about you that you want to explore deeper. And the magic of coaching is that I'm not here to tell you what to do, but I'm here to accompany you in the process of finding your own answers. We are social creatures, and there's so much growth that we can do on our own, right? Sometimes you need a partner to help you ask the questions that you know the answers, right? At the end of the day, you know the answers, but to ask the right questions and to maybe look at different perspectives that maybe you haven't, been exposed to. And the most important thing for me in the coaching space is the accountability to take action on these things, right? Because one thing that I come to realize in the child-free women that I talk to and I work with is that most of us, if not all of us, are extremely smart people, extremely intelligent, which again, to me, it's makes sense because we have had to do a lot of internal, work to arrive at this decision and be okay with it, right? You have to become self-aware and really explore your own feelings and your own perspectives. So it makes sense that, women that I work with, child-free women, come to me already with like a lot of understanding about themselves, a lot of self-awareness, but the part that gets a little bit harder is the integration of that, right? It's like, how do I act upon what I already know, right? That's the scary part for most of us, right? To actually do what I know is true for me. That's the part of like the wisdom, right? Putting the knowledge into action, right? And that's the part to me that's the magic of the coaching space, right? When I see my clients actually taking actions that lead to what they want and seeing their faces, right? And feeling so proud of actually being able to see the tangible results of their journey.
And if they aren't quite up for a one-on-one coaching session, you also offer like a sisterhood program, right? Where
Yes.
it's a group of women. I think it's typically 10 to 12 women, correct?
Yeah, so that's I capped it at 10 to 12 because I wanted to be, intimate. But yes, this is the Childfree Sisterhood group program, and this was born from the fact that when I, have for years, I've been now 7 years creating child-free community. I talked to women. The number one struggle was the confidence on their choice. But the second struggle was sisterhood, was making female friends. And not only making female friends, but feeling that sense of sisterhood with other women. Because as child-free women, if you have a lot of friends who are moms or friends that think differently than you, it can be very easy to feel kind of left out or not seen, not understood. And so because that was the second most common struggle, I wanted to create something to talk about this and to work on this. So I created the Child Free Sisterhood program. It's a 12-week program, and I use the framework of the feminine archetypes through Greek goddesses. So it's very fun and interesting because we talk about Greek goddesses and how they represent feminine archetypes that live within us as women. And the concept of the program is to explore how we can create sisterhood from inside out, right? So creating that sisterhood within ourselves and then sisterhood with the woman around us. Sisterhood is not just about having friends, it's a lifestyle, right? It's something we embody, it's something that we bring wherever we go. And so it has been beautiful. I already ran 3 rounds of the program, and every woman that has gone through it has experienced beautiful shifts in their perspectives about themselves, about women around them. And so I'm very excited to open the next round to start June of this year, 2026. And yeah, keep bringing more women into this beautiful space of reconnecting with ourselves. So that way we can reconnect deeper with other women around us.
Your episode on your podcast about the Greek goddess that didn't have children was super fascinating. I'll put a link to that in the show notes
Yeah.
for everybody to listen, but I found it super fascinating and something I had never thought of before with the different goddesses.
Yeah, to me that was mind blown because, like I said, I never heard of a child-free woman being seen as something to be looked up to. Like it was the opposite for me. My grandmother literally told me that it was a sin, right? So this idea that a child-free woman can be seen as something wise and divine and sacred and all of these beautiful things. When I learned about the Greek goddesses that were child-free and they were worshipped by the Greek society, which wasn't a dumb society where civilization was born, it to me it was mind blown, and to me it was very empowering. And so I started studying more about this, and yeah, like child-free goddesses have been worshipped in different cultures and societies for throughout history. So bringing that back, right? Bringing that back into awareness and feeling proud and empowering ourselves has been one of the main missions for me to bring that back and make women feel like there is pride to feel, they should feel proud about their child free choice. And like I said before, because I have been in the self development and spiritual world since I was 12, even now, every time I participate in different circles and ceremonies and things related to spirituality, there's still a taboo when it comes to being child free, being a child free, right? I still find that there's not a lot of space for that to be super openly talked about. So I want to break that. I want to change that. I want to make sure that we occupy the space that we're meant to.
That triggered a memory that I was attending another not child free, excuse me. I was attending another women's circle
Mhm.
virtually that was not child free. So it was a mix. I think I was the only person there that I know didn't want children. There was another woman or two that didn't have them, but I'm not sure
Mm.
if they want them or not. But a lot of the discussion was on motherhood and things like that, which is fine. There's a space for that, right? But then when I found your child-free women's group, I was even more excited because I'm like, okay, this is more my gear of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
It was such a relief.
Yeah. Yes. That has been my experience too. I've gone to many circles and, like I said, spaces where it's mixed, which I mean is fine. I love those too. There's space for everything. But yeah, usually the idea, the concept of motherhood is kind of like takes center stage as a blank statement for womanhood in a way. Sometimes it's not super directly stated, but it kind of takes over in some way, and or at least to me, in some spaces, it made me feel a little excluded, um, because I feel like, oh, so what about women who don't want to have kids? And the most that I hear them talk about is when women that couldn't have kids, right? And so, of course, that's brought up as a topic, but I usually never, or at least so far, have heard in mixed spaces, um, the idea of not wanting to have children as the being included in the same way. So we're breaking that.
I know. It's great. And is it okay with you if we put links to your Discord or the child-free group
Yeah.
circles that you have in the show notes in
Oh
case
yeah,
anybody
totally.
would
That
like
will
to
be that will
join?
be awesome. Yeah, that will be awesome. My
Okay.
goal or mission is to bring as many women together as possible. I've heard of so many stories of women that have met through the Discord and they have gone ahead and done meetups and finding people in their city. So yeah, of course, if I can be a space where that can happen, I'll feel very happy.
I actually met a lady here in Seattle. I'm in Washington right now, and we met through your Discord, and we're like, "Let's do
Oh,
a meetup." So her and I went and had coffee. We hit it off, had a great time, and then we're like, okay, let's get the husbands to meet and see if they get along. And so then we went out together for drinks and played pool and stuff at this restaurant. We all had a great time, and actually it was funny because she went out of town and I went out of town, completely unrelated. And so our husbands met up and they went like on a weekend camping guys trip after it. So it was
Cool.
really neat. I was like, all from your Discord. So thank you.
Hey, of course. That's so awesome. Yeah, yeah. Like that's
Yeah.
what I love to hear. Yeah, because we need to find more people, connect with more people that have similar views, right, on life. There's I'm not saying that we cannot have all, I think diversity is beautiful and we should all have diverse group of circle of friends and stuff, but there are not that many child-free people, right? So it's
Right.
important to intentionally find those connections.
100%. Well, as we wrap up, I have a tradition on the show where the previous guest leaves a question anonymously for the next guest.
Oh, I like that.
And so the question is, what advice would you give to your 20-year-old self if you went back?
Oh, wow. Of my 20-year-old self. I would say trust yourself, and be discerning who you ask for advice. I think at the end of the day, we know we know truly what we want and who we are. And sometimes especially when I was 20 years old, I would look at other people and think they knew better than me in different aspects of life. When now, as time has gone by, it's like, oh no, I because I am the expert of my own life. Nobody can know me better than
Mhm.
me. So I would say that. I would say to my 20-year self, trust yourself, trust that you know yourself, and be discerning about the people that you ask for advice in different areas of your life.
Very sound advice. Very sound. Well, thank you so much for your time today and for sitting down and talking. I've really enjoyed it, and I know our listeners will too.
You so much, and congratulations on having this space. I feel like this is something that we need more of to have more child-free voices and knowing that there's so many ways that this life can look like. And
Mhm.
having spaces like this when you showcase that, I feel like is so needed. And so you're doing a great job. So thank you so much for doing this.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Life Outside the Default. If you would like to connect with myself or our guest, or be a guest and share your story on the show, please check out the show notes. You will find all of our contact information there. Thank you.